Hi, John and Jane. Welcome to Alliance. My name's April. I'm going to take you through the Paradigm plant. Watch your step. So this is our PDI bay, our pre-delivery inspection bay. This is where all the units will come to get finished up. Any last-minute detail work that needs to be done will be done in this area, as well as final cleaning. We flush all the tanks. We also do something kind of unique in the industry, and that's a fog test going through the ventilation system to make sure we don't have any gas smells coming out. We've also come up with some innovations to make sure that you have a top quality unit coming out to you. We have a shaker that vigorously shakes our units for 10 minutes, and we'll show you that at the end. We also have a new rain bay in our newest factory, which will douse a unit for 30 minutes, make sure there's no leaks, no problems with it. So just as many tests as we can do to make sure we're giving you a quality product. Once a unit is ready to roll to a dealer, we will put a text out to the sales team. If someone's available, they'll come and walk it as if they're selling it to a close friend or a family member, marking anything they see with red tape that would need to be fixed before it ever pulls out. So as many sets of eyes as we can get on these things before they pull out, that's really the idea here. So that's kind of the overview of PDI. If you have any questions about it, make sure to leave it in the comment section and we'll get back to you, but we're gonna take a look at the rest of the plant. All right, a little bit about the Alliance story. Ryan and Coley Brady are our two co-founders. Their father helped start Heartland RV, which eventually sold out to Thor. So in 2019, this campus was all cornfields. They didn't build anything for the first 6-7 months. They just collected feedback from full-timers, weekenders. They started collecting their sales team, which most of those guys had at least 10 or more years experience in the industry, and they came with a wealth of knowledge where those warranty issues were for other manufacturers, and that played a big part in our build process. So 2020 was our first model year. They built their first 15 Paradigm in a building that was already here. It's now our parts department. I'm told that they had to finish them on the outside of the building because the garage doors weren't tall enough to bring them through. So we've grown quite a bit since then. So plant 2 is only Paradigm. That's the only line that we build through this factory, and each plant has its own line. Off to the side, perpendicular to these other buildings, is our lamination facility. It builds all of our walls. Parts of it are temperature and humidity controlled to make sure that bonding process happens the way it needs to, which is a really good idea because here in Indiana, we can't control the weather and we get every type of weather sometimes from one day to the next. So it's really important to control that environment for the bonding process to happen the way it needs to. So we're gonna go all the way to the other end of the factory where the raw chassis are and work our way back this way towards PDI. So here we are at the very beginning of the assembly line. All of our chassis will come through this overhead door back here. We use a frame flipper to flip it completely upside down. That way we're working with gravity rather than against it when we install that underbelly. It also means our workers aren't on their back all day sliding in and out, which is really hard on their bodies. So they'll do the underbelly at this point, as well as putting on the running gear before flipping it back over and continuing to add more of the tanks. But I do want to point out, under our freshwater tank, we put a steel cage. No manufacturer is going to tell you to run with that thing full at 8 pounds per gallon and 98 gallons. That's a whole lot of weight. However, we know with boondocking and full timing, sometimes it is necessary to have water in there for short periods of time. So we put that steel cage in there to help reinforce it and make sure everything's secure. All right, so the frame is flipped back over. We've brought it over to install more tanks. As I mentioned before, we do a 98-gallon fresh in our Paradigm line. We do 2 53-gallon gray for 106-gallon total, 1 to 2 53-gallon black, depending on if there's a second half bathroom and if there's room in the chassis for it. We do all PEX plumbing, none of the downgraded braided version at any given point. We also do shutoff valves at every major plumbing point. So if you do have a leak, you don't have to stop your whole camp experience. You can shut off just that area, still have full functionality of your coach until you get to a point where you can diagnose the problem. We do color and number coded for our wiring, our 12-volt system. We've gone to a 12-volt standard across the board for our refrigerators. We don't use anything else at this point. Our 12-volt refrigerators have a much lower power draw. Almost all of our units, and definitely including Paradigm, have at least one solar panel standard. Paradigm will come with a 320-watt solar panel. So once you add a battery into your unit, you can run your refrigerator, your USB ports, your lights, and your slides all without an inverter, which would require a solar plus option. When it comes to the I-beam of a full profile, typically in this industry, it would be a 12-inch I-beam. We use a 10-inch. The whole point of the extra 2 inches is for the weak part of the chassis, which is the running gear area. So what we do is add a 2-inch torsion tube just to that area. It gives it the strength and rigidity it needs. It also pushes vibration down into the tire instead of up into the wall of the unit, but it eliminates excess weight everywhere where you don't need it. So just like inches correlate to feet when you're talking about the living space, which is why we do the 101-inch wide body frame, every pound matters whether you're full-timing it or not. So if we can keep that structural integrity, but give you back some of that weight, that's what we're gonna do. There are a variety of common problems in the industry, and that was one of the things that was discussed when Alliance first started. What are those common problems? One of them dealt with the spring hangers, and typically speaking, when a compromise would happen with those spring hangers, either bending or twisting or breaking, they would add a V-bracket. And when we first started, we thought, well, that's a small piece that does a big job. Let's go ahead and add that at the very beginning as a standard feature. So all of our units, including our Deltas, our little travel trailers, always have a V-bracket on that spring hanger. It gives you 4 welding points instead of just 2. So really trying to be more proactive than reactive to common industry problems. We went to MoreRide and we told them we love your CRE 3000, but we want to bulk it up. So instead of a 1/4 inch shackle and wet bolt, we do a 1/2 inch. We also add another layer of leaf springs. So instead of the industry standard of 3.5 K per tire, we do 4 K per tire. So even if you never upgrade your 7,000 pound Dexter axles, you still have 8,000 pounds of suspension between those 2 tires. We do a Super G rated 14 ply tire, higher heat rating, higher weight rating than the industry norm, 320 pounds over the industry standard per tire. All right, so our flooring for our full profile in the Paradigm and in the Valor, actually in the living portion, is gonna be an aluminum frame. Then there's gonna be batten fiber insulation throughout. Then a 5/8 inch true board that we get in the biggest pieces possible so that you don't have those seams rubbing together and possibly popping up over time. Then we do a layer of radiant foil, which we're also gonna see in the roofing. And then we wrap it all in Darko, a waterproof material, and put laminate flooring on top of that. So you have about 4 inches of thickness for your flooring in a full profile. This allows us to put stiffer ductwork throughout that flooring system so you don't have as much of the flex ducting as maybe you would in a mid-profile, which is a little bit of a different build. Anytime you're running your furnace, there's gonna be forced heat into that underbelly so that your tanks are staying consistent. But we also put 12-volt packs on each of the tanks. So if it's a cooler morning or evening and you're only running your little fireplace for warmth, you can turn on those 12-volt packs and just be sure that things are running smoothly as well. These things are just like a bridge. So you always see the signs, bridges freeze first. Same concept here. While we do offer full-time RVing, it won't void our warranties. These things are not just like a house because wind can whip underneath them. So we do recommend that if you're in cold environments, especially if there's wind involved, that you skirt your unit. And sometimes you might even need an additional heat source underneath there because of that idea of airflow going through. So we're gonna go to cabinetry. This is our cabinetry area. We do as much of our cabinetry in-house as we possibly can. A lot of manufacturers will outsource their cabinetry, which seems like a great idea until you get something shipped in that's damaged or broken, and then you have to ship it back out, wait for things to ship back in. It's a quick process, so being able to control that quality here on site is huge for us. Not only that, it's a factory environment. Things are going to get dinged up and broken along the line sooner or later. So instead of just fixing it good enough to pass inspection, we have professional carpenters here on site who can fix it the way it needs to be without having to take a giant piece out and wait for something to come back in. So upstairs, they'll do all the fascia on large machines to get it 90 degrees square. Then they'll bring it down here, add it to the bigger piece items before they load it onto the unit. Next, we're gonna go to walls. So I mentioned our lamination facility at the beginning of the tour. We give our walls a full 7 days to properly cure. Some manufacturers try to rush that a little bit and do 5 days. We don't. We give them the full 7 before they ever become upright and go over to one of our factories. So the construction of the wall itself is going to be a fully laminated sidewall and then an aluminum frame. There'll be block foam insulation this time throughout the entire wall, which you can see off to the side. And then anywhere that there's going to be screws, we stuff with wood. So you think of a pop can, you can rip a screw out pretty easily. So we put that wood in there for extra grip and bite. These things are just like an earthquake on the outside, hurricane on the inside every time they roll down the road. So any extra security we can do with those screws, that's what we're going to do. You may have heard of the term Asdel. It's a composite material that a lot of manufacturers are using on the inside of that outer wall. We use it too. Asdel's great because it won't absorb water or moisture. If water does get into a wall, it's going to slide straight through. It can't create rot or mold or mildew by connecting to that Asdel. But we take it a step further, and we also use composite on the inner wall. So instead of Luan, which is wood-based and much more commonly used, you think of a piece of cardboard. One drop of water gets on it, it's slowly going to spread and expand and possibly lead to delamination, which no one wants to deal with. So to eliminate or really prohibit that from happening, we use composite on the inner wall as well. It's much lighter weight, it's a much better insulator. We pay a little bit more for it, but we feel like the peace of mind of knowing that delamination isn't really going to be a possibility long-term is worth it. So over in lamination, they'll create this wall as one solid piece. They'll completely route out the windows and the doors, but they only partially route out the slides. Once it gets to the factory it's intended for, they'll finish routing out that slide, mark it with a VIN and a model number, and that slide wall will travel with its original wall down the line. That way, when it comes back into play, it fits just like a puzzle piece, because it basically is a puzzle piece. There's no degree of human error trying to measure that out. It also means that over time, if you have any kind of discoloration, you don't have a really white slide out and a little bit off around it, which makes it look way worse. It's all going to age the same way because it's all from the same wall. So we've taken a look at the raw chassis, we've seen some of our cabinetry. Now you've taken a look at the walls, let's go up and take a look at the roofing. All right, so from this vantage point, you can get a really good look at our roof construction. Our wooden trusses are going to be 5.5-inch crowns, 16 inches to center, which makes them fully serviceable, fully walkable. In between those trusses is going to be batten fiber insulation, and that also goes over the cap of the unit. Then we'll have a layer of radiant foil, which looks like aluminum foil, but it's similar to what a marathon runner might wear after a big race, deflecting heat, keeping the inside consistent. So that'll go over the entire length of the unit as well as the cap. Then we have a layer of roof decking, an adhesive layer, and then the PVC membrane, which we'll talk about in a minute. At this point, you can see the ductwork coming up from the gray and the black tanks. They'll cut those off a little bit further. You can also see wiring coming up through. We try to prep as much as we can as far as giving you extra solar capability and a backup camera, but we know that there are some things that you might want to add that we didn't think about. So we do a wire chase in each of our units so that if you do add something to the roof, you have a direct line down to that main control board without having to try to figure out a way to get those wires down there. We went to Coleman Mach and we asked them, what's the quickest, most efficient way to cool down a small space? And they said, just like a car, dump AC is the way to go. Anytime you have ductwork, you're losing 20 to 30% of your cold air in the ducts alone before it ever gets to you. So we do as little ductwork as possible, mainly into the bathrooms to make sure that they're cooled off. So for the Paradigm line, you'll get 3 ACs standard. They're going to be 13.5 BTU, which means you can run 2 of them off of a 30 amp and all 3 of them off of a 50 amp. A lot of other manufacturers will do 2 ACs that are a little bit higher, like maybe 14 or 15 BTU, which sounds great because they're more powerful, but then you have more ductwork, and you also have to be on a 50 amp to be able to run both of them. I rarely hear a customer, if ever, say, man, I wish my unit was colder. Usually they're saying, no, it freezes us out. We only run a couple ACs during the day and it's perfect, which is exactly the feedback we want to hear. So down further, talking about the PVC. PVC isn't new to the industry by any means, but it is newer in the use as a roof membrane. TPO is still more commonly used. TPO is rubber-based, which means it's going to absorb heat. It's also going to contract over time, which is why with a TPO roof, you constantly have to be checking the seals to make sure it hasn't pulled away. PVC is actually deflective of heat. So at any given time to go up on a roof of one of our units and service it, it's going to be much cooler up there than a TPO roof, which ultimately means the unit as a whole is going to be a lot cooler. We started with, I think, maybe a 12-year warranty on that PVC membrane. Now we do lifetime. It's held up so well for us that we feel confident in offering that. All of our past models are grandfathered into that. If you back into a campsite and snag that PVC membrane with a branch, you can go to your local hardware store, get some PVC cement. We'll walk you through how to patch it up, no big deal. You get very much of a snag in a TPO roof and you're replacing the entire thing for several $1,000s. We really feel like it'll be the industry standard eventually. It's just the industry is kind of slow to change, so we're glad we started with it. So you saw how the roof is assembled, but check this out. I want to show you, and I know it's hard to see, but how thick that PVC membrane is on top of your unit. All right, let's go down and check out the slides. On our way to Slideouts, I do want to point out this yellowish orange machine. It's a suction cup machine that actually suction cups against the caps and puts them in place while we drill them on. It kind of blows my mind, but there are some manufacturers that have their workers hold up the fiberglass cap, which isn't good for the fiberglass and it's not good for the workers. And I don't know how they're getting it perfectly aligned, but we use this suction cup machine to put it exactly where it needs to be. And so we can drill it on and everything is square and ready to go. It's better for the cap, it's better for our workers. It's just one of those simple machines that we have in each of our factories to improve the quality and improve the workplace. So I've mentioned a few ways that we really try to improve the work environment for our employees, but another one that I think is really neat is that all our factories are built 8 feet taller than the industry norm. That might seem like a really small detail, but when our workers come in and it's still dark out and they don't get to leave until later in the afternoon, having natural sunlight is a huge morale boost. Not only that, but throughout the day, during the highest point of the work hours, as we were walking through, you would hear every genre of music known to man because that's encouraged. Whatever makes the workplace more enjoyable is really what we want to do to create that fun environment where people enjoy being here and enjoy working for Alliance. So going back to the slides, when we do our slide system, we're going to put a bulb seal on the outside, bulb seal on the inside, 2 rain guard flaps, a rain guard and a whisk guard, and then corner guards. The industry as a whole, people were saying, when I slide my slide in or out, I can see a little bit of light in the corners. And where there's light, there's potential for bugs or water or critters, heaven forbid, to get in. So these corner guards work well to eliminate that possibility. Anytime there is a window on the side of a slide, it's going to act as a natural channel changer for these rain guard flaps. If there isn't a window, then it's going to have small black tabs and that'll act as the channel changer. I have had customers come through and say, oh, I didn't know those had a purpose. One person even said, I took them off. Don't take them off. We do put them on there for a reason, and that's to change the direction of these. Next, we're going to talk about final finish and quality control. So let's go down this way. So this is a stop block. This is what we use to make sure everyone knows that all eyes on this unit and making sure that the systems are operational and ready to go before it goes beyond this particular station onto the next one. So no movement here until this stop block gets taken off. I also want to point out how we use different colored pieces of tape for our quality control. You see a green piece of tape up here. We have about 4 or 5 different colors. The color is going to indicate where a problem was picked up on the line. That way, if we keep having the same problem reoccurring, we can go back to that team, address the issue, and make sure it doesn't keep happening. Not only that, but having our PDI attached to the factory and having that PDI team only checking Paradigm is huge for our quality control. There are some manufacturers who have a separate campus for quality or PDI checks, and I don't know how they're communicating with the factory. I know even having it attached sometimes it's a little bit difficult. A really small, insignificant example would be last summer, I was going through an inspection for Paradigm, and part of the drawer was sticking. It wasn't being shaved down far enough for that secret compartment in the bedroom. We addressed it, we let the team know, but they weren't in that area to see how much they need to take off, so it was still sticking. So we pulled the team, had them fix it, and you can bet it didn't keep happening because it slows down all of production. So just one example of how having our PDI right here makes a huge difference for our quality and our communication to the factory. So we're going to keep moving down. We're getting really close to PDI, and they're going to be finishing off these units and cleaning them up. All right, a few fun facts about Alliance as a whole. We have 5 plants. This one in particular, plant 2 for Paradigm, is 120,000 square feet. And each of our plants have between 100 and 150 employees. Something I also want to point out is being privately owned, we are able to make decisions pretty quickly as far as what can benefit our customers. So one small example of that, our backup and brake lights used to be horizontal. We had enough customers give us feedback and say, well, why not put them vertical? It's not huge, but at least it'll give a little more visibility. We didn't have to go before a board, ask permission to do that, write out a report where this is why we want to do that. We just made the decision because it's better for our customers, better for our product, and we went ahead and did it. Now we have a unique opportunity to see the shaker machine that we have started using on all of our Paradigm. All right, so this is our shaker machine that we just installed at the end of 2023. We will bring all Paradigms through here, put the wheels on the shaker, and it vigorously shakes the unit for 10 minutes. Basically simulating going down a really bumpy road to make sure nothing shakes loose. So it's a great way for us to check, okay, before it even leaves these doors, what is it gonna look like once it goes down some of those roads that you might be experiencing where you think, wow, this is a rough one. We wanna make sure it's gonna stay just like we sent it out. We also now have a rain bay in our newest factory where we take select units and douse it with rain from every direction, making sure there are no leaks, making sure the quality is exactly where we want it to be. Now let's go take a look at a nearly completed Paradigm. So this is a unit that's really close to completion, but not all completely finished. You'll notice some red tape up at the doorway. There's might be some more when we get inside, but it's getting really close to the end of PDI, getting close to that point where we call over some of our sales team to walk these units and make sure everything's good. So let's go in and take a look. So that's the end of our tour. At this point, the unit would be pulled out once all the red tape is done and we've made all the final finishes. It would be taken over to our lot to await a transport company to come, which is paved in asphalt to protect your investment. And then it would come to a dealer near you. Thank you for joining us once again. And if you would like to come out and see the tour for yourself firsthand, we encourage you to go to alliancerv.com/tour and schedule a tour for yourself.